basically, I mean, I would be talking about the other aspects of, DALC, that is manual DALC tips and tricks. I have no financial disclosures. We all know that deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty is a lamellar transplantation it is a surgical technique of a lamellar transplantation, wherein the corneal tissue is replaced, leaving behind the endothelium and Descemet's membrane complex. The donor lamella is positioned directly onto the Descemet's membrane, preserving the recipient's endothelium, hence decreasing the risk of immunological rejection. Despite the development of new surgical techniques and instruments, the success of DALC has been limited by its technical difficulty, protracted operating times, and the risk of intraoperative corneal penetration. Let us look at quickly at the, history. In 1974, Professor Mohammad Anwar was the first to describe bearing Descemet's membrane in corneal dissection, reporting excellent smoothness of the stromal bed for the donor graft button. Since then, over the past few decades, numerous surgical strategies have been developed. DALC can be performed using various methods to create a good optical graft-host interface. People have used big bubble technique, intrastromal air injection, Melis technique, hydrodelamination, viscodissection, and femtosecond laser-assisted technique. The big bubble technique introduced by Anwar and Takeman in 2002 is currently the most common approach, in which air is injected into the deep stroma to achieve a large air bubble between Descemet's membrane and stroma, which facilitates dissection at pre-Descemet's plane, which was very elegantly demonstrated by a previous speaker, Dr. Sahu. Now the question is, why should we learn manual technique? There are situations where you cannot achieve a big bubble, and then you would like to resort to other techniques wherein you would like to have advantages of DALC procedure. So dissection can be considered as an option to avoid conversion to PKP in the event of intraoperative complications, or as an alternative to the big bubble technique. When the surgical goal is to reach the plane of Descemet's membrane, visual outcomes are better with almost most of the techniques. So which cases can go for manual DALC? Let's look at that. All the indications of DALC, or in cases of stromal scarring, very advanced keratoconus, wherein you don't have much stroma on top of the cone, and then you may probably resort to a manual DALC rather than a big bubble DALC. Advanced PMCD, pellucid marginal corneal degeneration, intraoperative small perfs, one can convert to manual technique. If it is a resolved hydrops with a scar. Early therapeutic DALC for non-responding infective keratitis, where the infection is limited to anterior two-thirds of the corneal stroma. Corneal scar or ectasia post-RK or post-hexagonal keratotomy. Post-CXL also, it is difficult to achieve a big bubble, and maybe one can resort to manual procedure, and post-chemical injury scar as well. Looking at the preoperative planning, one should do a thorough examination. One should know the minimal corneal thickness. If you have an access to anterior segment OCT, it would help greatly, which was very elegantly demonstrated in the previous session by various speakers. Preferably take the surgery under general anesthesia. One can do wet lab practice and can practice the same in all PK cases. If you are a beginner, you can practice the same in all PK cases, and then eventually you can convert the case into a PK. Keep a standby optical tissue in the initial part. Even if you end up with microperf, you can still continue with manual dissection from other side. You can leave a small sliver of stromal tissue covering the perf when you suture the donor button, and one should have lots of patience to complete the surgery meticulously. Essentially, in manual technique, it is important to refine the cornea at 60 to 80% depth. One can use a lift and stretch the tissue to facilitate the dissection by severing the stretched stromal fibers, so that you are not actually dissecting, but you are just severing the fibers. During dissection, keep the bed dry all the time. Decompress the anterior chamber to facilitate the dissection when you reach the center of the cone, especially in conical corneas. Wash the bed thoroughly before placing the donor tissue, and preferably use surgical sponges and not cotton buds to avoid inadvertent interface retention of cotton fibers. One needs minimal instruments to begin with, like corneal trephines, which could be guarded or non-guarded, crescent knife or lamellar dissectors, fine non-traumatic corneal tooth forceps or Hoskins single cup or double cup forceps, short and long blade corneal scissors to cut the cornea, corneal punch to prepare the corneal button, fine needle holder and suture tying forceps, and disposable blade for small side put, radial 8 or 16 markers to have your sutures in the right distance. One can use a forceps to expand the peripheral lamellar pocket, and one can use blunt scissors in the periphery to dissect, which I'll come to discuss when I show the video. Intraoperative keratoscopy to titrate the astigmatism. These are the vacuum trephines which one can use once you master certain techniques, and definitely it would help you in reaching the right plane. Let's look at the video. Is my video visible? Here, this is a very advanced case of keratoconus wherein very limited amount of stroma was left. Like probably we are dealing with hardly 250 micron corneal thickness. So I mean, directly after marking the cornea, I've just made a mark onto the cornea, and then like dissected the corneal tissue with the help of crescent blade. Gradually, as you are seeing, I'm lifting the corneal stroma and just helping the dissection with the help of dissector. You keep on decompressing the anterior chamber so that it facilitates your plane and you don't end up into perforating the center of the cornea. Once you know that you have reached an adequate dissection, you can prepare a donor button. You can, if you want to use the donor DM, then you can, preserve it differently, or you can remove it with the sponges. Mark the donor cornea with the radial marker, and you can suture the corneal button as we suture in all the keratoplasty. But here I would like to share a tip that because you are having disparity in the donor cornea and the recipient bed, you would like to have your sutures at least partial thickness 50% in the donor and almost they would 50% in the donor and almost 90% in the recipient bed, so that the donor would sit into the bed very nicely. This is another case, a case of very advanced infectious keratitis. He used topical steroids and he developed diminution of vision for 2 weeks. And this turned out to be a mixed infection, though doing a DALK in a mixed infection is not a very good idea, but still manual DALK especially. But we decided to go ahead taking a call on table. Can you see the video here running? Yeah, you measure the area of the involvement, and then start dissecting after marking the cornea, start dissecting it with the crescent knife. You can do it layer by layer, so that like here we are a little careful because sometimes the central area may be having very spongy appearance, and then you can end up perforating that because we realize that there is still an involvement into the underlying stroma. So you dissect a second layer and you can still go on dissecting the third layer till you are sure that you have just left behind hardly about 10% of a stromal tissue. You can see here. And it is important to remove the peripheral part of the ledge so that your donor button sits very well into the bed. And then you can suture this tissue with almost 24 to 32 interrupted sutures, and with the intraoperative keratoscopy, you can titrate the This is the outcome of the same case a couple of months later. And this is almost after 3 years. You can see that the interface is very clear despite it being a manual DALK. And the one thing which you can note here is I've still kept a lateral tarsorrhaphy here because this is a very, very large graft, about 10.5 millimeter or 11 millimeter in size. So these are the cases where there will be some epithelial problems, and that's why I've kept the
Paras, your time is up. If you can wrap it up, it will be a short session. Yes.
Yeah, I'll just sum it up. One can do a manual DALK in marginal corneal degeneration. As you can see here, this is intraoperative picture and this is post-operative outcome on those cases. This is a case where, there was a keratoconus hydrops, and you can leave behind a small amount of corneal scar, and still you can go ahead with manual DALK. Similar cases here, if you leave behind some stroma, initially there may be some haze, but later on it can clear up if it is less than 10%. So to summarize, one can begin with minimal instrumentation. A wet lab practice can shorten the learning curve. One can try practicing lamellar dissection in all PK cases. If less than 10% of stroma is left, long-term results are almost similar to big bubble DALK. And one can rescue a DALK in the event of a failed big bubble technique. So mastering the art of lamellar manual dissection will facilitate learning curve for other techniques as well. Thank you for your kind attention and time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Paras. And after listening to both the speakers on the big bubble and the manual DALC, we have Dr. Vanati, who's going to talk about how not to convert to PKP and still salvage DALC in the event of encountering complications. Dr. Vanati, please. Dr. Vanati is there?
So Dr. Vanati is not in this meeting. She has another commitment, so she's not part of it.
Okay.
Prasad, you already have the speaker who's going to be giving this talk, don't you?
Yes, I have got the list. So quickly, Anhita is there. So
yeah, this talk will be given by Dr. Anahita. I'm not
I was not aware.
Sure if she's in the group.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Sure, go ahead, please.
So, good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for providing me with this opportunity to present at this session. So today I will be discussing perforations in DALC, what are the pre-op risk factors, the intraoperative management, and the postoperative considerations in the follow-up of such cases. So coming to the preoperative factors, the incidence of perforation in DALC ranges from 1 to 50% of cases. And although perforation can occur in any step of DALC or in any case of DALC, several studies have looked into identifying those cases where the risk is higher. So in the study by Micheletto et al., corneas with advanced ectasias and thickness less than 250 microns were considered to be at a higher risk of perforation. And a similar finding was noted in the study by Huang et al. And they also added that patients with corneal scars, especially deeper scars, are also more prone to perforations. Now, before we discuss the management of such perforations, let us have a brief look at the type of perforations that can occur. So microperforations are those that measure around 0.5 to 1 millimeter and are associated with a very stable anterior chamber, whereas macroperforations are larger than 1 millimeter and have an unstable anterior chamber. Usually, unless the microperforation extends, in all these cases, the DALC can be completed, whereas in macroperforations, it depends upon the stability of the AC. So a few of these cases can get converted to PK. Fortunately, microperforations are far more common, and the overall rate of conversion of DALC to PK in such cases ranges from 1 to 18%. So when it comes to the type of technique that is employed, the incidence of perforation is higher in manual dissection when compared to cases with a big bubble, and the rate of perforation is similar between the two different types of bubbles. However, in cases with a type 1 bubble, the posterior wall is stronger and has more elastic fibers. And so when perforations do occur, they are less likely to extend with further manipulation. A perforation can occur in any step of the surgery, right from the trephination up to the suturing. However, the most common step where the perforation can occur is during the dissection of the posterior stromal layers. Let us now see how to handle the perforations during each of these cases. So if the perforation occurs during trephination and if it is less than 2 clock hours, the open area can be sutured and manual dissection can be attempted. So in an interesting case described by Ghaffari et al., there was a perforation during trephination and they used a stromal patch graft to seal the same. So here what they did was a small stromal patch was taken from the patient's anterior stromal lenticule and it was secured after creating a small pocket in the area of the trephination just above the perforation. So this area of the stromal patch graft was secured with a suture and this area was secured with fibrin glue after sealing it. And then the donor lenticule was sutured in place. So what is important here is that to ensure that the new stromal tissue straddles the area of perforation to provide a complete seal. Perforations that occur during injection of air can be managed either with an air tamponade or by leaving behind some residual stroma. So here in this case, attempts have been made to form a big bubble. And during this attempt where air is being injected, we can see it is escaping into the anterior chamber. The bubbles are freely mobile. So in the same track where the cannula was placed, an iris depositor is being inserted and manual dissection is being carried out. And then the 4 leaflets of the posterior stroma will be created. using the same iris depositor and a blade, and they will be individually excised. At the end of this, again, the donor stroma is sutured in place with nylon sutures. Our next patient was a case of advanced keratoconus in the left eye, and he was intolerant to rigid contact lenses. So here the surgeon is injecting air with a 29 gauge needle. Again, we can see that the air is escaping into the anterior chamber. So what is different in this case is, in the previous case, the dissection was done first and then the leaflets were created. But here first the leaflets are being created and then stepwise dissection of each quadrant is being carried out. So this is being done in 2 phases. So now the first layer of the stroma is being removed, and to reach a deeper plane of the stroma, again, another level of dissection is being carried out. So during this dissection, as we can see this, as the surgeon progresses circumferentially, and during the last bit of stroma is being excised, the perforation that was there extends. So the remaining stroma is excised, leaving behind a small bit of residual stroma over here. Air is being injected, and we can see that the bubble is fairly stable with the residual stroma in place. And then the donor stroma is sutured with nylon sutures. So as I previously mentioned, manual dissection or dissection of the posterior stromal layers, this is the step where perforation most commonly occurs. And again, it can be managed either with an air tamponade or by leaving behind residual stroma. So here the anterior stromal cap has already been removed and a big bubble could not be achieved. So the surgeon is carrying out manual dissection of the posterior stromal layers. So again, once the dissection is carried out, the leaflets are being cut. And once again, a deeper level, the surgeon tries to reach a deeper level of the posterior stroma. And during this step, we can see here, a small perforation will be noted. So since the perforation was very small and air bubble was injected and the anterior chamber was fairly stable after that, and the donor stroma was sutured, and at the end of the surgery, an air tamponade was left in situ. So our next case is a patient with macular dystrophy who underwent DALK in the right eye. So here again, a big bubble was achieved and the superficial layers of the stroma are excised. So during the excision of the first leaflet, there was suspicion of a perforation. So air is being injected into the anterior stroma. Here we can see the air is escaping the AC. So here the dissection is being carried out away from the area of perforation, and a little bit of residual stroma is again being left behind. Again, I would like to stress that whenever there's a perforation, the rest of the stromal dissection has to be done before we approach the area where the perforation is present. So again, after this, the anterior chamber is stable and the surgery is completed. So this is our last case. Here again, the patient had macular dystrophy and a DALK was being carried out. 2 leaflets have already been excised. And when the other half of the corneal stroma, where dissection is being excision is being attempted, we can see over here that there is a perforation. So air is being injected and then the rest of the dissection is carried out. So after this dissection is carried out, stability of the anterior chamber is again checked with air. So it is not very stable, and so fibrin glue is placed. And once the fibrin glue is placed, the AC is relatively more stable. And then the donor lenticule is sutured in place. So the last step where perforation can occur is during suturing. So this is more common in type 2 bubbles where only the DM is left behind. And if perforation is small, the rest of the suturing can be completed with an air tamponade. Fibrin glue can also be used if the rest of the pre-descemet layer is intact. So moving on to the last section, post-op DM detachments and endothelial cell density. Loss of endothelial cell density is the most common complication seen in these patients. Rarely we can also see interface scarring or scarring along the edges of the tear as is seen here. So several studies, they all say that these complications are more common in patients with macroperforations.